Hi, everyone. Welcome to RoboMQ's August webinar. Today, we're discussing an increasingly important business process that every employee goes through, onboarding. Companies invest heavily in finding and hiring top talent, but did you know that 70% of employees believe the onboarding process will make or break a new hire's experience? I'm joined today by Brahm Gupta and Jordan McDonald. Brahm is the head of products at RoboMQ, and Jordan is an account executive at RoboMQ. Brahm is an experienced identity governance leader with a passion for helping companies automate JML lifecycle management. And Brahm will highlight the challenges with manual onboarding, then show how Hire to Retire automates the IT onboarding process, creating a superior first day experience that can increase three-year employee retention rates by over 50%. There will be a Q&A section following Brahm's presentation, so ask any questions you have in the chat, and we'll answer them after Brahm is finished. With that, I'll hand it over to Brahm.
Hey, thank you, Cameron. And thank you everyone for attending this webinar. So we had been having these couple of series of webinars lately, and most of these webinars, we would cover the whole product, which is around automating JML, which is joiner, mover, and levers from 20 plus HR systems, the most commonly used, and the ones which you use are covered. So from these HR systems to AD, Entra ID, Google Workspace, or Okta, any of these IDP, we covered everything from joiner, mover, and lever, and what activities happen on the identity side, privilege side, and access side. Now, in this webinar and the following ones, we are trying to zoom in onto one or few of the specific processes. So instead of touching upon the overall product and trying to get into the details, we'll pick up a process and go into it. For this particular webinar, the process is going to be onboarding, because onboarding is one of the most important process, which has a big impact of how the employees retention, how the employees experience, and what they think of the organization is impacted by. So in this one, I'll specifically go into the details of the onboarding process, how onboarding is done, how it can be done, and how we can help you guys. So I'll just start with a quick presentation. And then after that quick presentation, I will get into the product and show you what is possible or what we can do. So let me share my deck first, and then we go from there. Here we go. So as the topic is, right, ensuring employees are ready to hit the ground running on day one. Now, to get into the details of it, what we need to see is what is the impact of poor onboarding. I mean, this is not our data, but this is the generally known data. I mean, you can take it with your own grain of salt, but what we know is that it does have a big impact. According to Glassdoor, strong onboarding improves new hire retention by 82% and productivity by over 70%, which seems reasonable because, when you have a better onboarding, employees feel welcome to the workplace, as well as when they are in the first few days, they're just not walking around like, what do I do? Who am I? What am I supposed to do? Do I have everything that I need to do my job? So those things are not in employees' mind, which gives them a more comfortable experience and they're more productive. So it kind of makes sense. According to Gartner, it says that successful onboarding can increase an employee's discretionary effort by more than 20%. Now, that is a big deal, right? Discretionary effort, employees which put that effort is everybody wants them, right? And it can drive employee performance by up to 15%. Furthermore, committed employees work 57% harder and 9 times less likely to leave. That's a big statement, right? You get the best employee, they're motivated, they work harder, and they don't leave. Who doesn't want those kind of employees? And that's where the employee onboarding comes in. Now, if you look at this picture, I'm trying to set in context the whole onboarding process, right? Because what I'm going to talk about or what our product does is not the full onboarding, but there are two parts of the onboarding. One is HR onboarding, something which HR systems do, and most of the HR systems and HR departments do it, and they have a process set in place because some of these are legal and regulatory requirement. The part that we're going to talk is IT onboarding, the activities that happen on the IT side, on the identity side, so that employees are ready to get going the day they walk in on the door. And that part we're going to cover. Now, if you look from left to right, things start as soon as employee accepts the offer and signs the contract. They sign the contract, and then HR takes them through the I-9, background check, drug test, profile creation, and so on. They complete these set of activities. At the same time, before the start date, depending upon how complex the organization is or how much time IT needs to get the employee profile situated, laptop created, workspace given, and so on and so forth, all those set of activities are IT onboarding. And expectation is that all of these, if successfully completed before the employee's first day, when the employee starts his employment, that can provide a superior first day at work. People walking in the door, they show up on the gal, they know who their peers know who they are, they show up in the org chart, they have an email set up for them, they have a laptop provision for them, they have a workspace given to them, they are in the right distribution list, they have access to right SharePoint sites, team sites, shared mailboxes, they have access to third party application. Imagine if all of this is ready for you on the day one, how good the experience can be. And that's really what is possible if you have a fully automated IT onboarding part of it, which I'm going to cover in this presentation. Now, we did a survey and we collected the data to see how people really handle onboarding, offboarding, these activities today. And it was not a surprise, but the fact that most of the places it is managed as a ITSM activity. Typically, HR will open a service desk ticket. Based on that service desk ticket, somebody is going to give the access, do everything, right? It's a bunch of tickets and the requests that are created to have the employee onboarded. Few send an email to IT. Their concept of HR sending an Excel tracker on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, knowing, telling them who's coming next week. And then some people will just call the help desk. So depending upon the organization, the maturity of the organization, you could be using ITSM workflows versus just sending an email tracker or help desk call. Now, each one of them, even the ITSM workflow based approach, it is a workflow, it is a automation, but it is still manual. What the workflow does is just make sure that the task is assigned to the right people at the right time. But then the full automation is missing. Now, how it is done today. Further going into how it is done today, let's say whichever method, right? It's a ticket, it's a Excel, it's an email, whichever way HR notifies IT. Typically, the process is it goes to a service desk queue. Then some sysadmin is going to go in, they're going to create an account, and typically what they do is they will create account, they try to see, okay, Michael is coming in, he should be like John because John works in the same department, same manager, has the same kind of role. They will copy John's profile and give it to Michael. And then what happens? Then Michael is over next 3 to 15 or more days, or first few, let's say first 2 weeks, he's going to create more and more ticket. He will create ticket for everything else that needed. He need access to certain system. He or she need access to a SharePoint site. He or she need access to certain privileges. All of these tickets are created, and eventually in couple of days or 10 days, 15 days, the employee is well settled. And the net result is you end up completing or serving at least 3 to 4 or 5 tickets per employee onboarding. And that happens over the period of time. So the experience is not good, and you're doing the job which could potentially be automated. Now, let's say if you automate all of this process and you automate it with hire to retire or similar product. I'm not saying we are the only one in the market, but with the products like hire to retire, if you automate this employee onboarding, what will happen is if you look on the left-hand side, either will be able to get the data from ATS system way ahead of the start date, or if the data exists in HCM system ahead of the start date, we get the employee profile. We get the basic profile, we get the job information, which means who the person is, we get what is a reporting manager, we get the start date, end date, we get these basic information about the worker or the employee profile, and then we create the employee identity and rest of the things that you see in these blue boxes before the start date. So we create the account in Office 365 or AD. They have a Windows login or the AD login. The email is created. They have a reporting tree setup. So they show up in the gal, they show up in the org chart, they're given the group memberships, all kind of group membership, Office 365 group, security group, distribution list, share mailboxes. They're given the privileges. And we also have a SIM gateway so that they are given the third party system access, the systems that they need to have access to so that they can start doing their job. They also get the resources. So their workspace is assigned, their laptop is provisioned, and we also support scenarios where you can support remote employees because there's a level of complexity that you have to ship the laptop and so on. So timely creation of account, timely activation of account, getting everything ready so that they're good to go. In addition to it, you can send welcome email. You can send things like acknowledging company asset, the resources that they got assigned, laptop assigned. A lot of communication happens, which has to be timed along with onboarding and the first day at work, which can also be automated and it can be templated for every person. So you don't have to, nobody has to go in and send it. Rather, it will be okay. If John joins, the mail goes out, which is for John. If Michael joins, the mail goes out, which is for Michael, based on their employee profile as well as what AD attribute you have. So all said and done, when they walk in the door at 9 a.m. or if they log in into a onboarding meeting at 9 a.m. on Monday, they're fully set up to go. They already have everything that they need and they can start working. That's what can be achieved. Now the onboarding, I mean, this is what we cover as a product. We cover the full JML, which is joiner, mover, and lever. But in this case, I'm going to focus on joiner, which is onboarding. And I talked about most of these items that we do upon joining, but at the same time, we handle the movers, transition, role transition, how the role-based access works so that people have access on a need-to-know basis, as well as handling termination, sensitive termination, how we manage access removal, how we manage license removal, and so on. And those will be part of the next next 2 or 3 webinars where we'll focus on movers and levers, and I'll welcome all of you to join again on those ones. But for now, let's continue on the onboarding, how we can make a superior first day at work. So this is a little nuanced, but what I wanted to highlight that in a lot of organization, it is practically not possible to have the employee profile created in HCM or payroll ahead of time so that IT can have the laptop provision and resources can be assigned. I mean, sometimes, people don't complete the paperwork. Sometimes it's an emergency hire. A lot of times situation happen, and depending upon what industry you are, there may be different situation. So you basically have two options. HR and IT can agree that, okay, I want to have the profile created in the payroll 7 days in advance or 5 days in advance so that IT can onboard. Great. If that is the case, no issues. If it is not possible, then we also integrate with around 8 or so ATS system or recruitment system. So what we can do is as soon as employee accepts the offer, we can create the profile, and then that way IT gets enough of the time. And then when the final profile shows up in HCM or payroll, that additional information can help us do the rest of the thing. So you are covered either way, even if you cannot get to a point where you can I won't say force, but you can not get to agree with HR that they can have the profile created in advance. So you're covered with the ATS integration. Now, summarizing the problem that we solve, right? So the core problem that we solve is we automate joiner, mover, and lever with HR system as a source of truth and optionally the ATS as a source of truth so that employees are ready on the first day as they move through their life cycle, get married, name changes happen, get promoted, get relocated. We can manage their life cycle, the changes to them, the privileges and access that go along with the transition, supporting the transition period. So we do all of that. And then we do termination, sensitive termination, manage the identity and access and privilege upon termination, as well as ensure that security risks are not created. If somebody is not terminated in time and carries the access, there's a risk of the security risk, which we avoid. We have a deep integration with Microsoft 365 that adds some capabilities, as well as we provide deep analytics, reporting, and compliance support. So we have full change data capture that can help you meet ISO 27001 or SOC 2 requirements if you have, which these days most of the customer have it, or even if you don't have it, they want to comply with certain cybersecurity standards which are derived based of NIST, and we help you meet that. This is based on analysis of 200 or so customers that we have, what benefit they get. And we find that most customers reduce HR and IT workload for managing this activity, which is joiner, mover, and lever, by 90%. So it's almost zero touch full automation that's we are able to do. And then there's a 60% cost avoidance because there's a built up cost of the time that HR spends on communicating with IT handling multiple tickets, and so on. So that is a cost avoidance. I'm not talking about the cost of the risk avoidance that comes with handling termination. I'm not talking about the productivity of the new hire, which also has a big impact depending upon your organization, your situation. It may vary 1, 2 days, 3 days to a week. What does it take for the new hire to be productive? Is it on day one? I think that's a big question we should ask ourselves. Are we doing everything that is needed so that employee can be productive on the day one? And that is a cost that is not factored in this statement, but there's a big cost of it. Now, these are the, in summary, before I jump to show you the real thing or the demo, these are the benefit we have. Superior first state work. That is what we're going to focus most importantly on. We do sync between HR to IT system, keeping HR as a source of truth. We do manage role-based access control so that privileges are granted based on who you are. Similarly, it happens with access. We have a SIM gateway for access provisioning. We do resource provisioning by integration with service desk. And then we help you avoid security and compliance risk, and as well as you can certify to certain compliance requirements. This is for the workday, but it works exactly the same way for 20 plus HR system. This is a little bit of a schematic view before I get into showing the product that we, in summary, very high level, because we keep trying to keep it at a more functional level. We get the data from HR system over the API. Then we process the data, and then we create the identity, give the role-based privilege, give the access, and we talk to multiple of these endpoints. Then we are also able to help you enforce MFA, single sign-on, and license management. So I'll keep it to this so that the functional context is set as I show you the product. Now I'll jump into the quick demo. I'll have to change my sharing. Give me just 1 second. Okay. So this is how the product looks like. Can you guys see my screen? Oh, looks like you can. Now I can see it. So I'll pick up, for example, one. I mean, these are multiple of these workflows because it's our demo account, but I'll pick up ADP, for example, and we'll pick up ADP API to hybrid AD integration because hybrid AD has the most amount of complexity. So as we get into it, and as I promised, I'm going to focus on the onboarding. So let's get the basics set up. Just so that we have everything set up. So we have these application. You make a choice of the HR systems that we have, some 20 plus. We have these bunch of ATS systems, iSIMs, Greenhouse, Lever, and so on. And the ATS systems which are offered by the HCM itself, like ADP recruiting and Paycor onboarding. We support that. Then we are able to talk to your IDP endpoints. And once you set up, then you create a connection, you talk to HR system so that you can get a data over the API. You talk to the endpoints on the identity. In this case, it's a hybrid. So we talk to on-prem agent AD, we talk to Entra ID, we talk to SharePoint Online, we talk to Exchange. Now, once that is set up, what you do is the API that gives you a huge set of data. What you need, you will choose. Basically, what you need is you need the ID. You need who do you report to. You need the basic PII, first name, last name, preferred name, so that you can create the account. You need to know their start date and last day worked so that life cycle can be managed, whether they are new hire, whether they are rehire, whether it's a change of role, or whether it's a termination reason for handling the sensitive termination. And then rest of the fields are essentially the job identifier, or what you would call a role in the company, who you are, what access you need, what is the basis to get that access. And across the product, these attributes drive the behavior. So these attributes helps us define what we should grant, what policy should we put, who gets what, whose mailbox turns into a shared mailbox upon termination. So you can use any of these attributes to make those choice. We are time zones. We support multiple time zone, or which means we are time zone sensitive, meaning in case of onboarding, let's say we onboard on Monday. Employee's start date is Monday. Now, at what time on Monday do you want the employee account to get activated? Say 8 a.m. You can choose it. 8 a.m. in New York versus 8 a.m. in LA are two different ones. So we, based on employee's location, we are time zone sensitive to it. It is very important in the termination case because you want to make sure that 6 p.m. local time access is terminated, and we will honor that local time. Now, once you have this data coming in from the HR system, what we do is we map the data into Active Directory. So you can use any number of attributes that you do. You will choose how the common name is constructed, or display name. You can choose how the email is constructed. You can choose how the Windows login or UPN is constructed. And then you have a lot of these options available for data mapping and transformation. We also support extension attribute. This is a full iPaaS kind of view where you can do data mapping, transformation, and data resolution. We support functions. And the good thing is, since we want to maintain the spirit of a no code, no scripting platform, we have built these functions to behave exactly like Excel. So if you know how to do a concat in Excel, you can do the concat on our platform. That saves you any to spend on any learning curve. We want to make sure that you focus on your business, you focus on your identity management process to get it done. So let's say you have mapped all of these attributes, then account is created. Now, along with the account being created, there are certain policies and rules that have to be applied, and I'll focus on the onboarding. So in onboarding, you want to create a password for them. There are multiple options. You can do a passphrase like an angry cat, or some HMAC seeded cryptic password, or just a fixed password. You can apply the policies. You can force them to change the login. You can write back the generated work email, because we generate the work email back to HR. And then the most important is this part where you choose what time on the start date will the account be activated, and what time it should be created and activated. Let's say 8 a.m. Then you also can choose how many days in advance you want to have the account created. So there are two activities. We create the account, we activate the account. Activation of the account, say on the start date, 8 a.m. Now, the creation of the account is where IT needs some bandwidth, some time, right? IT need a good window of opportunity so that you can provision the laptop, provision the resources. This is where, we get the data, and then we say, okay, 5 days in advance, IT needs 5 days to do their activity. You can choose. So 5 days before, account is created with all the information that we have about the account, and then you do the activities, get the laptop ready, and so on and so forth. And then on the start date, say 8 a.m., the account will be activated so one can log in. So it ensures security. Now, when it comes to security is ensured because we create it in disabled state, right? And then it will be enabled upon, say, 8 a.m. on Monday. Now, we also support this scenario to support the remote workers, because in remote worker case, you prepared the laptop, you ship the laptop. Let's say they got it on Thursday. You want them to log in, and if you're using Windows Autopilot, you want it to be updated and so on, so that it's ready to work on for the onboarding meeting on Monday at 9 a.m. So you can choose that, okay, for this remote scenario, I'll create my account 5 days in advance or 7 days in advance, but I'll activate the account for login 2 days in advance so that employee can log in and be ready for Monday morning meeting. So we cover those remote worker scenario, which is very common in today's environment. And then so Along with it, you put them in the OU. So we have rules, which is role-based rules. So you can define based on what criteria, department, location, title, country code, any number of criteria that you want to use so that people are put in the correct OU. And you can define priorities, you can define rules which are very specific to very generic so that each of the employee passes through those rules and then eventually finds a OU to the side in. And there's a concept of default OU. So if you cannot find a match or if your rules are not fully built or some new department was added which is not here, then they go to the default OU. So you can put them into the right OU. Group membership is very important because this is where you're going to give them the privileges. So we support all the groups which are resident in AD, these two, AD security group, ADDL. We support Entra ID based group, which is Entra ID security group, Microsoft 365 group, which is also an Entra ID, then Entra ID DL. Then we also support main enabled group, which is a group supported on Exchange. So we support a total of, I believe, seven groups, including, yes, seven groups, including OU, and the it is all role based. So you can use any number of attribute. Example is showing only two, but you can add more attribute. You can use any number of employee profile attribute, which is where HR is a source of truth, and based on that you can say, okay, if you are a HR manager, what security group you should be part of. And we are reading it directly from the endpoint, so we are reading from AD and Entra ID, so you don't have to write anything. It's all making choices, and the UX is very intuitive, very guided. It provides you everything so that you can configure your business process onto the product. Now, Microsoft 365 group is another important one because with this, you can control who gets access to what SharePoint sites gets to Teams, as well as they get access to shared mailboxes, because most organization will have shared mailboxes like AR and AP and so on. So you can tie all of that based on the role of the person so that when person comes in on the first day, they have access to right SharePoint sites, they are part of the right teams, as well as if needed, they're part of the right shared mailboxes. And all of that can be done based on the HR profile. Now, so what we saw, we got the data from HR, we created the profile, we made the choices as how your identity management policies are around onboarding. We put them into the right OU. We also gave them the right privilege by putting them into right group membership. Now, the other thing that we have is ability to use the communication hub, which basically sends templated, tailored emails to the employee. So you can use the data elements from the ADP or HR system and the previous and new value in AD, and you can create these like this email is welcome email, the first day of work, saying what you need to know when you come to the work. So these kind of emails can be sent. You can send emails for acknowledging company handbook. You can send emails to uh, acknowledge receipt of company property. You can do all kind of possible use cases given the fact that email can be sent upon certain activity, which is onboarding, offboarding, termination, etc. And then these are tailored and templated to the particular employee in that case. And it also has this rich text editor, and you can send attachments and so on. So this is a very powerful capability of communication that we have in the product. Now, jumping to ITSM integration, right? Because not everything can be automated the way I had shown. There's always going to be certain set of activities that you may need to do, like by some sysadmin, by approvers, or in the ITSM system. So we integrate with multiple of the ITSM systems, ServiceNow, Freshservice. And I mean, there's these bunch of 8 or 10 ITSM that we integrate, and we keep adding more. Now, if you go to the ITSM integration, what you basically do is you are able to say, okay, I want to create a ticket upon onboarding, right? Because we are talking onboarding here. I want to create a ticket so that laptop can be assigned. So you can create this ticket and say, okay, it will be executed upon onboarding. Then you can also define a policy, because different type of people might have a different type of access. So you can say that this ticket will only be triggered if the employee's title is something, or employee is part of this department. So you can make those choices, and then you have full capability that is offered by ServiceNow. So you can create an incident, you can create a record, you can trigger the workflow, because if you're already created created a workflow which takes care of onboarding employees in service. Now there's no need to repeat the effort. We can just trigger the workflow. We have a ServiceNow has a concept of order guide. So you can trigger the order guide, which is very similar to the workflow, so that multiple set of activities can happen and the employee is ready with everything that they need. And then there's a capability to order stuff from the catalog item. So access, even physical assets can be ordered, system access can be ordered by using the catalog item. So we cover all of it, and depending upon what ITSM system you have, the mileage may vary because different ITSM systems have different capabilities. But whatever capabilities they provide, we are able to wire them so that you can make those resource and asset assignment as a part of your onboarding, as well as the JML workflow in general. So we cover the service desk integration for resource and asset provisioning. Then this is our SIM gateway. This is where you can give third-party system access based on the profile, which could be based on certain security groups that they have access to, or based on the ABAC, which is based on the profile attribute. We have these 200 plus connectors that are native connectors, and they provide a much easier user interface, as well as you don't have to pay additional API fee to anybody to get them executed. And then you also have access to these Microsoft Enterprise App Provisioners, where the Microsoft app will do the provisioning. We will do the RBAC. So you will configure the provisioner to say, okay, if somebody is part of certain group, give them access. If somebody moves out of that certain group, remove the access. Who gets into the group and who does not, our onboarding process or the workflow that you define can determine it based on the profile of the person. So you have access to virtually hundreds of connectors. And if you don't have one which you need, we are more than happy to add it within 6 months, and we don't charge for it because we want to make sure that we are able to provide these connectors which are needed for our customers, because each one of our customers represent the industry or the market segment we serve. If you use it, somebody else in the same market segment is using that application. So we are more than happy to add that connector to our repository, but it is still very rich repository as of now. So by this time, I covered identity creation, privilege assignment, access, as well as service desk, how you can manage the resource and asset provisioning. Now let's look into, okay, you trusted hire to retire, you gave your onboarding to it. What it does? How do I know what it does? So there's the observability here. What you can do here is you can look at everything that has happened. So you can see the full data, like all of the joiner, mover, and leaver events that have been processed are shown here. And we do a full change data capture. So let me pick up one of the example. So if you look at this, we have captured everything that we got from ADP. So all the information, all of the employee profile that we got from ADP, it is captured here. Then if you look at the Active Directory tab, we are keeping the previous and new value, which AD by default doesn't do it, but we are keeping that value. What was the profile in AD before the change and after the change? So you see the full change into the AD. You can choose to see only what changed. And then for the privileges, you'll be able to see what groups were added, removed, or retained. So we do the full change data captures in line with HR as a source of truth, what we got from HR and what identity and privilege changes we made. Now this, you can see it on the product, as well as you have a capability to run a filter and export it. Most customers use the scheduled report. So you can schedule a report, and report will be delivered to individuals, distribution list, and so on. You can make your own choice of what format you want in. It will provide the summary of what activities happened or what employee changes were processed, as well as detail of each. Now, another interesting thing that we have, in addition, use of this full detailed change data capture, is that you can push this data to one of your BI systems, right? So you can push it to S3, you can push it to MySQL, you can push it to Azure Blob. So that full change data capture can be used to run Power BI reports. It also helps you meet the compliance requirements. So once you use hire to retire product for employee life cycle, workforce life cycle management, JML management, you have a process definition, and there's an English version of that process definition. Whatever you configured on the product, it is here. So this is the process that you follow, right? That's what auditors want to know. You have a process to follow, great. Now, if you have a process to follow, provide me the evidence. When it comes to provide me the evidence, then this compliance and audit trails come in play, because you can say, okay, Jack was hired, terminated on this date or hired on this date, and these activities were done. So it helps you meet those compliance requirements as well as keeps you secure. Now, the other capability we also have is a review capability. What it means is when we do these identity changes, which are critical, right? Because identity and access and privilege are very significant activities and they can have an impact on the organization and its security. Sometime you may want to see, okay, I want to review and approve before the changes are automatically done. So the product can run in a supervised mode or autopilot mode, similar to Tesla. You can run it in autopilot. It will do the job, show you everything in the observability. Or what it will do is it will calculate what it needs to do, what changes it needs to make an identity system, and wait for your approval before it does it. And it provides you all the details so that you can make the right decision, which is very similar to the observe page. It will show you the HR data. It will show you the proposed changes that we will make. It will show you how the privileges are added, removed, and retained. Once you review it, you can say, okay, I'm good with it. I'll approve it, and then the system will run. So at a high level, this brings me to the demo of the product and what it can do. You guys can ask the questions or you can put the question on chat. Cameron, who's and other team members are there, and they can read the question so that we can respond to it. So please ask me the question, because I've been speaking on a monologue for a long time. So you will get a break, as well as I really want to answer the questions that you have.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation and for the demo, Bram. We have a couple questions that have been asked during the course of that presentation, so we'd love to open up the floor for a Q&A section. And if you have any additional questions, do feel free to ask them at the moment. Let's start. Bram, can hire to retire handle onboarding for contractors?
Yes. So, and the contract it's a good question because it is important. I mean, even now, but back in my life, I had in large companies, we used to have contractors. They will come in, they have a 6-month contract, they leave. Months later, their account is still active, because unlike employees, there's not a good traceability on that. And that is where we come in. So we can handle contractors, and as we get the data, let's say somebody comes as a contractor for 6 months, we'll schedule a 6-month termination. So we'll schedule that all the access will be removed 6 months from now. Now, if the contract get extended, we get the updated information. And once we get the updated information, we can update it. So if the contract get extended, the schedule event also get extended. So that way, when the contractor's term is over, SOW is over, the access is over. So we fully support it. The question becomes is, if the contractors are in HR system, great, very smooth. We don't have to do anything different. But often contractors are not available in the HR system. They are managed separately. In which case we can clone the workflow or define another workflow which is tailored for the contractors, and that workflow can get the data over the SFTP endpoint. You can drag and drop the data into our own product. So you can go and drag and drop on hire to retire, or there's a form on hire to retire where you can make a manual entry about the contractors and we can handle it.
That's great. We think we have time for 2 more questions, so we'll go to this next one. How long does it usually take to set up group assignment rules in hire to retire?
So the group assignment rules is a tricky one, because what we have seen, and in most organization, it's a tribal knowledge. There's no set rules. Somebody requests something and gets the roles, and nobody generally invest an effort in saying, okay, if you meet certain criteria, you get this roles. So what we recommend and how most of our customers do, they would put the basic rules that they know today as to how the group assignment can be done, put them in there, go live in 6 to 8 weeks, which most customers take to go live on our product. And then we have this capability that you can add groups any day. I mean, I can share my screen again and show it on the product. So if you can add group any day, you can change the configuration of workflow any day, and that way they build these groups over the period of time. We've seen 4 to 6 months is a time that customers spend on finally getting to a state where they feel happy about adding more rules around group assignment. And what I was trying to show is, let's say you change the workflow today, you added 2 more rules. Tomorrow you come to office and say, oh man, it didn't work right. No problem. You can go to the last known good state, restore the workflow. From tomorrow, things are all good.
That's great. And one more question. How scalable is hire to retire as our company grows?
So most of the customers we have are in the mid market, because that's where, there's a lack of such products, the kind of product we have, which helps them meet most of the core requirement of the IGA. On the higher end of the market, we have SailPoint, Savient, and so on, but they are expensive and they need expensive resources to manage it. So most of the mid market is what we attract. But we have customers with 10,000 employees. We have Top Golf with 50,000 employees. So it's pretty scalable. And if you just do the math, we have, even if we have like 1,000 or 2,000 employee customers on an average, we have 200 or so customers. So the instance that I'm showing you is running 200 into 1,000 employees as of now, even ignoring the big outliers like Top Golf and few others which come in. And then when we get to the education sector or higher ed sector, you get universities and certain institution with 2,000 employees, but then 30,000 students. We support them, as well as for that education sector, we have a concept of volume pricing, because students do not need so much capabilities as is needed for the regular corporate workers. So yeah, pretty scalable, I would say it in a short answer.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for your time and for the presentation, Brahm. That's pretty much all the time we have. Brahm, where can someone go if they want to learn more about hire to retire?
I would say the best thing is you can go to the website, you can Google us. If you Google us, you'll find a lot of resources on the documentation, on product capabilities, features, webinars like this, there are demos. There are a lot of small demos, like guide demos on the product itself. You can find a lot of things. You can go to ChatGPT, ask it. I mean, we are very transparent in what we do. There's a tons and tons of information that you can find on internet. In fact, sometime I'm on a sales call or something, and somebody asks for some blog, and I would search on Google. So you can find everything on internet, right? And if you find it, you want to talk to us, click on any of the contact us button, and we'll be happy to talk to you. When you share this, when we share this webinar recording, there's an email, sales@robomq.io. There's an 800 number. You can find a lot of ways to reach out to us. Or since you already joined this webinar, you know who you are, how to reach us, just send us an email.
Fantastic. That's all the time we have. As Brahm said, you can visit robomq.io to learn more or book a free one-on-one discovery call. We'd be happy to show you a personalized version of hire to retire that is showing the business value impact for your specific organization. Thanks again to Brahm for the presentation, and I hope you all have a great Labor Day weekend.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending, and have a great weekend.